This is Angela Newsom with RightLIGHT Reviews. We're so glad you joined us, and we hope that you'll subscribe to learn more about authors and books for Christian families. Hi, everyone. This is Angela with Book Reviews for Christian Families, and I want to welcome you to our show today. And I want to introduce you to an author that has written some books that I want you to check out. His name is Lee, and I want him to tell a little bit about himself and what he has written.
Sure. Well, my name is Lee Stephen, and I am a science fiction author, primarily. I am best known for a series that from 2006 up until a couple of years ago was called Epic, but I have recently rebranded to Destiny's Edge, and I'm re-releasing the 6 current books in the series as new additions to ultimately finish the series with books 7, 8, and 9. It's an ennealogy. Ennealogy is a long and fancy word for saying 9, a series of 9. So that's what ennealogy means. And so 6 books will be coming out that have already been released as Epic, and then the final 3 will all make the Destiny's Edge set. Nice.
So tell us a little bit about your family and when you started writing.
All right. So well, I think every writer, their experiences, I've been writing since I could pick up a pencil, right? And so I mean, it really was true with me. Thinking back to like 3rd grade and whatnot. And my favorite time was English time. Every grade at some point in the year, we would write a story, bind it with like yarn or staples or something. And I just ate that up. It was the greatest thing in the world. So I really have been writing. It's not a cop out to say my whole life from the point that I could pick up a pen and paper. But yeah. And so I write now. Like you asked my family. We are a homeschooling family. I have 3 boys. We live in South Louisiana, in a small town called Des Allemands. And so, it's a pretty fun, household. It's a boy house. It's a boy home, 3 boys. So house of boys, and house of boys, right?
Your oldest is 12, right?
Oldest is 12. So I have a 12, 9, and just turned 7. So we're beyond the diapers and pull-ups and all those things, and soon we'll be hitting cars in college and all of that stuff. But yeah, not quite ready.
It goes by so fast.
Not quite ready.
It does. All right. So, what I want you to do first is actually so people can kind of get into the story and know a little bit about your books. So start with the first one, Dawn of Destiny, and kind of show people what it looks like. So if they go on Amazon and they're looking for it, they know exactly what they're looking for, and maybe read the back.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So this is Dawn of Destiny, the first book in Destiny's Edge. Let me get it framed here. It's actually the same as I like to make movie posters. So that's back when it was called Epic, but rebranded Destiny's Edge. So this is the one here that you want to look for. I'll read the back and then talk a little bit about it. Scott Remington had a plan. God had a different one. Fresh off the heels of first contact with extraterrestrials, Scott joins the Earth Defense Network in the fight to protect humanity. Little does he realize that it will take but one fateful decision on the battlefield to both thrust him to the heights of success and plunge him into the darkness of doubt and disbelief. So that is the first book, and it really is a story about a young soldier who enlists in this global military that protects Earth from hostile invaders from other worlds, and kind of feels like he's following a calling to do this. And he realizes pretty quick that when you follow a calling, it doesn't always work out the way you think it will. And so as a totality of the whole series, as much as it's a story of alien invasion and action, it's also about faith and the loss of faith and the attempt to recapture that faith. And so I don't shy away from tough questions that I think sometimes we don't like to ask ourselves, but they're part of the honest Christian walk, so.
Now, what age would you say that your books are for?
All right. So I describe it like this. The books are written for grownups, but mature teenagers can handle them. So, for example, my 12-year-old son just got to read Dawn of Destiny, the first book, right? I would say that generally PG-13 to describe the series in a nutshell, at least at the onset. But I would probably say he's too young for the second one right now. I might wait till another year or two. because there's some rough stuff. There's some dark stuff. This is war. These are flawed people. These are some rough topics that I'm not afraid to hit head on. But my whole thing has always been you can do that in an appropriate way, right? So if you're a parent, first and foremost, you should read it. You should know what your kids are reading. You should read it. I think you'll like it. But there's not going to be 4-letter words all over the place. I don't do profanity. There's not going to be gratuitous things. I want to be careful with my words because I don't know if younger people are watching, but there's not going to be a certain type of gratuitous content in these books. Right. And I think of when I was even a kid, but even as an adult, I'll crack open a book sometimes and turn the pages and everything's fine. And then you hit that chapter where it's like, well, what is this even doing here? Was this a checkbox chapter? Like, what is going on? This is an independent series, so there's no checkbox. The checkbox is it good? Is it fun? Am I writing with integrity? And am I representing my own faith as a Christian properly as I write this? And so, I think that if that answers your question a little bit.
Okay, let's get a little bit more details. Okay,
yes.
So you're watching Amazon, and up on the screen it says PG-13 because of, and it's got like foul language,
right,
and sexual content, and whatever, smoking, whatever. And so,
what's going to be on mine?
Yeah, what's going to be on yours?
So sexual content will not be there. Profanity will not be there. But you will get, this violence is war. In war, there's blood. There is the darkness of the human condition, which I'm never afraid to address. And so, you're definitely going to have some mature content, not in the sexual way, but mature as in the like, boy, don't give your 8-year-old these books. This stuff that they're not going to be ready for. They're not going to understand. And so that's why I always tell parents to read it first. However, man, there's so much, I think, in this series with the different characters and with the different things they go through that even as believers, we can pull from and say like, man, you know what? Something that just happened, that kind of sucked, but I can relate to that. You know what? Mm-hmm. That was a rough thing to read, but boy, I could see that. Man, it makes me ask some questions about maybe myself or whatnot. And the whole frame of that is that I try not to sugarcoat the reality of being a person of faith, right? And for me, Christian faith. But it's not all sunshine and roses. It's not all peaches and cream. I think everybody can relate to moments where you're just like, oh my gosh, like, this is not the way I thought this would go, because there's stresses in life. There's spiritual warfare in life. And so I always always take issue a little bit with sugar-coated Christianity, right? Where like, oh, become a Christian and all your problems will be solved. All your problems will begin, because you'll start to realize like, oh, wow, this world is not the best, right? I am not the best, And so I try to never shy away from that. But you're going to see violence. You're going to see mature situations, I guess, as in there's things that we deal with as adults. There are things that there are circumstances that we find ourselves in. There are just bad things that happen in the world. Turn on the news for 10 minutes and you're going to get bad things that happen in the world. And just like the news, you might tell your kids, step out of the room while this one's on, but there's a certain age where, you tell your kids, all right, you stay in, you need to be aware that this is here. But that's not for, 7 or 8 year olds or something like that. I would describe this series much in that way. We're going to go in some rough places, but they're not going to compromise your convictions as you read them. And the Bible's the same way, right? There's Old Testament stuff that like you read and you're like, whoo,
Right.
Wow. Okay. That occurred. And you don't say, well, the Bible's bad for this, or the Bible's wrong for
Mhm.
this, or you should not read that. You just have to read it with the mindset of, this is the reality in which we live. And even though
Yeah.
this is not the reality in which we live, I try to emulate the
Okay.
faithful experience as best I can.
Now, would you call this a Christian series?
So it is a faith-based series. I'm going to explain what
Hmm.
that means. It's written from the perspective of a man of faith. You will not see Christ, the term Christian, any of that in here, and there's a reason why. I deal with aliens. I deal with extraterrestrials. This is about invaders from other worlds, right? And so the minute I say, well, this is a Christian main character. Now, well, how do aliens get saved? What does the gospel say about life in other worlds? And and
Hmm.
now, in order to answer those questions, which are inevitable if I'm going to write true, right? I have to make up doctrine. I have to be like, well, and they have their own Jesus, or maybe they don't get saved. Maybe they're angels. And
Right.
as a Christian, I respect God and I respect the gospel, the Bible, too much to like just flippantly like, okay, well, we're going to mold the doctrine into what I need to make the book work. That's
Okay.
not right. So he is a man of faith. It will be abundantly clear as you read, like, oh, this is the Christian faith. He's a person. This faith is patterned after Christianity, right down to the aspects of grace. Certain parables are even kind of referenced and stuff. And so
Mhm.
there are definitely things where you're going to recognize, oh, I know where that's coming from. That's
Okay.
that's something out of Romans. That's something out of this. You just won't see the term Christianity because I don't have to save aliens, man.
Right.
I don't know how that works.
Oh, right. All right. So let's go to your second book.
Sure,
Show
sure.
everybody that one.
This one just
The
came out.
cover. Yeah.
This is Outlaw Trigger. Let me try to get the cool picture there. So this is book 2, Enealogy book 2, Outlaw Trigger. I'll read the back if you'd like me to.
Yes.
Sure. All right. They say every man has a breaking point. Every man can be pushed off the ledge. Scott Remington entered Eden with the heart of a lion. He forged glory in the furnace of war, but on the heels of dawn, darkness awaits. Only when stretched to the limit will a man truly learn who he is. That limit is about to be breached. Lines will be crossed, sides will be chosen, faith will be put to the test. That's
Wow.
when some rough stuff starts.
Right. So then, so you said your 12-year-old isn't ready to read that second
Not
one
ready to
yet.
read.
So it
He'll be
kind of
13 or 14. It is a
reaches some
straight,
areas that are a little bit harder. So
yeah,
in a series, a lot of times you'll have some ups and downs, right?
right?
Um, is everything going to be down until the ninth book, or are there going to be wins, like
You know what?
throughout?
So there are definitely wins. There are definitely losses. It really is. I write and I try to pattern after real life, right? And sometimes you talk about mountains and valleys, and I'm in the mountain, now I'm
Yeah.
in the valley, and that whole experience is in this series. Sometimes in individual books, and so there. I don't want to get into spoiler territory, right?
Right.
Because I really think if you're a parent, man, I think you're gonna connect with this as much as your kids, as long as you're teenage and up, kids. But there are books where you're going to read it and be like, oh, that just happened. And then there are books where you'd be
Mm.
like, you're reminded of the grace of God, and you're reminded like, this is why we do it. This is why we live. So don't think that it's just let me do the downhill, right? It's more like down, up a little bit, and down and up a little bit and up, and so it goes all over the place, just like, real life goes all over the place.
So if someone's struggling, let's say, in their faith, just or in their daily walk, maybe they're, I'm saying, maybe it's a young man,
Right.
and parents are concerned and they want to give them a book that's going to encourage him. How would your book encourage him
So
on in
yeah,
just
first
in
and
daily life, right?
first and foremost, I think that uh, it's unafraid to ask questions that sometimes we don't
Mm-hmm.
want to ask. Like, is God real? I think we've all been in a place, even as believers, where we're like, is anything even going on? Is anybody even out there? I think that's a natural part of being flawed humanity, is you ask yourself those questions. Or yeah, this is my favorite, and by favorite I mean one that's the absolute worst, right? You feel led to do something, you do it, and then you ask yourself, did God tell me to do that, or did I make that up in my head and attributed it to God? Like, these are real questions that we have, like real questions that we uh struggle with and wrestle and grapple with as believers. And so what you're going to see, what you're going to um get from this, if you're a person who's struggling with your faith, or uh you want to give it to someone who you know has a lot of questions, is they're going to know that it's okay to ask these questions. The Bible itself, right, is not something where like, oh, don't question it, don't don't read that part that is a little, you don't quite know what that means, right? You got to ask questions, because you have to know not only what you believe, but you have to know why you believe it. And I believe that if you have a question, and it could be a deeply spiritual question, it can be a very dark question, because we go through dark periods in our life, right? I'm not afraid to say, ask yourself the question and then go to the Word and see what God says about it. I'm not worried about an answer not being found, because I know He will give an answer. And so, if there's going to be one thing that this, in that whole realm, that this series lets you know, is that it's okay to have those questions. It's okay to say, God, what is up?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand this, and don't feel like you're just the worst type of Christian because you have a question or you don't understand something.
Right.
Go to Him and He will give you an answer. It is not always the answer that you want, if it's a yes or a no thing, but He's
Right.
going to reveal Himself to you. And so, yeah, you build muscle with resistance. Works spiritually too. You have to build that faith muscle, so that when someone asks you, "Hey, why do you believe what you believe?" You don't have like, I don't know, my parents believe it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Get in there, get messy with it.
Now, another question, because it's a military book, right?
Yes.
Fighting against aliens.
Yes.
Um, have you got any feedback from people in the military that have read it? I'm sure that there are probably a lot that said, wow, a book for military people that doesn't have smut in it,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure that that's a big thing.
Yeah, I've actually gotten some fan mail from people who were out in in the Middle East. This was years ago. I would get people saying, they're with their unit, and they read the books, and that
Mm-hmm.
was always such a cool thing. Man, I got a heart for our servicemen and women, and so yeah, and it's been a great reception from them. However, don't let that, I would say, scare you if you are not a military person, or if you
Right.
don't think you're going to get lost in jargon and acronyms and all of this. It's written on a way that a layperson can pick up and read and be like, oh, okay, I'm not lost. I'm not lost in this.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I have gotten some pretty. It's always nice to get feedback from
Right.
people who are serving. I'll share a cool experience I had. This was early last year. This was kind of a surreal thing. It's probably one of the most surreal things that I've experienced as an author. But at the same time, I was coordinating with a Ukrainian fan and a Russian fan about the books at the same time, and I was like, "This is wild," And so, and they obviously are dealing with a lot, right? To put it
Mm-hmm.
mildly. And so, yeah, I mean, people who are surrounded by military or in the military can definitely get something fun from this. Fun, but also good.
Now, you addressed this earlier on when we first started about when you started the series, and I guess that might have just flown by some people, but you were actually a pretty young guy whenever you started working on this
Yes.
book series. So how old were you again?
When I wrote the original Dawn of Destiny, I was 19 years old, all of 1-9. And so yeah, it has been a ride. It's been so it released in 2006, but the first one. But it took me a while to get to that point. I was fresh out of college and I had no money. And so I knew I wanted to do it independently, because I didn't want people saying, well, you need to put 4-letter words in there. You got to have those kinds of scenes in there, and I didn't want anyone to say that, because then I felt like that's not me and that's not what I purport to represent. And so going independent, I wanted it to look professional. So I said, well, I'm not going to just throw it together. I'm gonna hire professionals. Professionals cost money. And so it was really a lot of saving, a lot of really many year investment to have enough money to just put this together the way it needed to be. But I wrote the crux of the story at 19 years old. So yeah, I was a young gun to do it. That's before being an indie author was cool. It was not the common thing to do, but it was an awesome experience. Awesome.
That's nice. Okay, so here's a different question for you. What was your alien inspiration? Ooh. What were your favorite aliens growing up that maybe inspired some of this?
I love that question, because I think that makes, I think that's something that makes the series different. So my all-time favorite science fiction movie is Alien, the original Alien movie. I grew up watching Predator, Terminator 2, Independence Day, a little bit later. These are all things that I really just loved. And then movies like Gladiator and things like that, right? And so these are none of these you would put like, we're going to make Christian things like that, right? But that's what I loved as a kid and growing up. And I still love those kinds of things today. Alien is a movie that I very much enjoy the whole vibe of it and the whole world that they've created. The fun part has been, and it really is fun bringing that kind of aesthetic or excitement or thrilling aspect, but making it something that you can enjoy and that you can enjoy with your teenage kids, and not feel like, boy, I just showed them something that they should not have seen. So you're going to get some really thrilling, riveting stuff here. I've heard it described. I've never seen the show, but I've heard it described by people who have seen the show. This is like Game of Thrones, but science fiction and clean. And so, I don't see myself ever watching that, but I take it as a compliment, I guess, because there's very intense and dramatic stuff, and people were riveted to that show. And so all of those kind of summer blockbuster things. And I guess that's how I would describe my writing style and what I aim for, because you're always aiming for something. I was always aiming to make a summer blockbuster in novel form. And so at the end of the day, you'll have 9 summer blockbusters that you can watch with your family, read, one day read with your family and enjoy it. Parents enjoy it. Give it to your teens, let them enjoy it, and then have a conversation about, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about what this person did? What was your favorite part? Man, what part bothered you the most? On a ooh, man, it makes me think, that type of level.
Now you kind of dropped something that we haven't talked about, but you have mentioned before, and that is your series is being pitched.
Yes. It is
Tell
being
a little bit about that.
All right.
As much as you can, or as little as you can. As
much as I can. Well, it's in the pitch process right now. And so there was an effort to translate the show. It's an ongoing effort to translate the show into a different medium, whether it's going to be a show, the books. I keep calling it a show. That shows how I think of this, right? But to adapt it into either movie or television. And so I don't want to get into all of the details, only to say like this is a thing that is garnering some interest. And so as always, the challenge is who can do it right, and who's going to do it in a way that is this and has respect for the material. But I know that God opens doors, and I know that God, I don't have to worry about that. In other words, I just got to make sure that I'm straight and that I'm having discernment. With that said, though, my goodness, I don't want to say too much, but also I just want to it's the opportunity you always are hoping for, right? As a writer, like, oh, I'd love to see this on TV or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the Lord has in store for it. But here's hoping and praying that there's a route that is going forward. And right now it's definitely being explored.
Nice. Okay. So one thing that struck my mind is, you're talking about a 9-book series. And one thing I think that's comforting to know for parents, young adults, old adults, anyone who's going to pick up this book is to know that the series is not going to go off on some woke tangent in the future, and that they can start the series and actually finish it and not be surprised by anything that shouldn't be in there, that Christians shouldn't be reading. So are you able to make that guarantee?
Oh, yeah, I will absolutely make that guarantee. I know that talk is cheap, and anyone can talk and say, yeah, I make that guarantee. And then you give them the sales and they're like, sucker. It's just, it's that's not who I am. That would be detrimental to the cause of Christ. Right. At the end of the day, this is the work of my hands as I'm trying to use the abilities that God has given me. So when I talk about the woke stuff, first off, I don't even like that term. I think the problem, I think what happens is people, they get a social justice issue and they say, well, we're going to make a narrative around this. That's just forget the whole faith aspect of it. It's just bad conceiving of ideas. It's just not a good idea. And so that's my roundabout way of saying it's poor writing. And so I don't ever aspire to be a poor writer. So it just would not be good writing to do that. More importantly, it would be a lack of integrity on my part. So I will tell parents that this is not a series that is going to suddenly be woke or suddenly be on some social justice tangent or something like that. I try to write things that could be considered timeless. I think in 10 years, we'll look back at everything done now and know, oh, that was obviously done 10 years ago, right? They're hammering home certain messages. The thing I want to hammer home is human stories, right? So don't worry about that, but go to destinysedge.com. It's my website, and read about me and read my testimony on the site, because I'm not afraid to share it. And I have one under the author bio. Read the whole thing. And you'll know where I stand on that. And so for me to take a series and kind of bait and switch it, change it, right at the tail end to get something in, man, that would just set a match to everything that I purport to be,
Okay.
And so
that's good to know for sure. Now, I just thought of something to ask.
All right.
Being a war story and aliens and military, is this a story just for guys? Or are there female characters?
There are many female characters in this series. In fact, I don't want to get into spoiler territory. In fact, they pretty much own one of the books, right, in the series. And so it's from female perspectives, one of the books. But throughout the series, you're going to see lots of men and women from different parts of the world. So don't think that this is just a testosterone journey. There are definitely some things for female readers, for female readers of fantasy, just drama in general. I think the scariest thing about calling it science fiction is that I don't want to box it and say like, oh, this is a science fiction thing. I'm not into sci-fi. This is a story, character driven story. Like you're into that, you'll like it whether it's called science fiction or not.
Okay.
I think of this. So my favorite, I talked about Alien. I talked about Predator, and I'd watch like Black Hawk Down and stuff as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the best show, I'm always talking about what I see on the screen. The best show I've ever seen is Downton Abbey, which is the opposite of the things that I love. But it was just good writing. It was just good writing, and good writing is good writing. And so don't let the genre of sci-fi stop you from taking a chance or letting your sons or daughters, as long as they're the right age, to take a chance on it. Because I think there's something in there. I have a lot of female fans of the series who will write and come see me when I go to a convention and stuff. And so, it's for anyone.
That's great. All right. Is there anything else that you would like to share about the book or anything else?
I think, give it a shot. Give this thing a shot. It's getting some traction right now. It is with the Destiny's Edge rebrand in progress. There's going to be some Fast and Furious releases over the course of the year to get the first 6 books out again, because they're out of print right now in Epic in the original brand. But I mean, you're gonna be getting them. You're gonna be getting them real quick over the course.
So are you saying that all 6 are going to be coming out next year? Is that what you're saying?
We'll see.
Okay.
So here's the thing: is
that's a pretty hefty goal.
It's a pretty hefty goal, but when I look at the work that needs to be done, because doing the new edition, it also offered me a chance to look back at stuff that I had written when I was 19 and say, you know what, I'm 43 years old now, right? I'm a little better at conveying things that I intend to convey. And so as much as it's not just, a new logo up here. There are things that have been rewritten in a way that I've just learned over 20 years of experience as a writer. Oh, here's how I can do that better. Here's how I can convey this better. Here's how I can write this character better. Yeah. And so the books that I say have needed the most work or had the longest gap between where I'm at now are really the first couple. Once I'm through those, the rest is, it's my level now, especially with the later ones. And so there's not a whole lot that needs to go into them.
Okay.
With that said, I'm not going to box myself in and say all 6 will be out next year. No, we'll see. I'm gonna.
Well, usually people have to wait a lot longer in between getting books. So now that you have 2 out, they're pretty long, right? Are they?
They're pretty. They're pretty.
How many pages?
So, Dawn of Destiny is. It might be almost at. So actually, red pages are 385. 385. Okay. And Outlaw Trigger is a little bit shorter. Oh, it's the only book that got shorter than the one before it. The book 6 that was released is, I think it's 700 pages.
Wow.
So they get big. They get big. And every time I write one that's that big, I say to myself, like, I'm never writing a book this long again. This took forever. And then the next book is longer because I can't stop.
Well, each one has a different story to tell. So
yeah, absolutely. So
nice. Okay. Well, I think what we're going to do is end our interview here, but we're going to have a kind of behind the scenes special section of the interview that we're going to ask you. And so tune in for that, everyone. But I want to thank Lee, for coming out. Go to, you can get your books on Amazon
Amazon.
and
That's
where
right.
else? Anywhere
It's
books are sold?
anywhere books can sold can probably order them in for you, but you're not going to walk into a. It's kind of the indie model is not always compatible with brick and mortar. So
Right.
don't walk in a store and think you're going to find them, but you can probably ask for them and they'll probably get them for you. But Amazon is probably going to be your fastest way to get them. And I would say this too, and this applies to me, but every Christian author, if you get a book and you read it, you enjoy it, write a review. Go give it some stars. Go put some words about it. That is a big, big deal to authors in general. It can be uplifting, but it's also important. And so it's good to spread the word about things that you enjoy. And I guarantee, and I say this as one, authors appreciate tremendously knowing that people cared enough to go and write a review or to give it a star rating or something.
Yes. And remind everybody about your website and the book titles again.
All right. So it is destinysedge.com. That is DESTINYSEDGE.com. And the books are Dawn of Destiny is the first one. That's number one right there with the orange cover. And Outlaw Trigger is the second one, which is right here. Number 2 cover. And I mean, if you go to these pages on Amazon, you'll see the books when they were released as Epic. So they'll still be there, and you'll see books 1 through 6 exist. And you'll see that these things have been out for a minute, just getting a really worthwhile expansion at this stage. So.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank Lee for coming on to the Book Reviews for Christian Families show. And you guys tune in. We're going to have a special question asked to Lee, and hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks so much, guys.
All right. See you guys there.
Hey guys, this is Angela with Book Reviews for Christian Families, and we are back with Lee, and we wanted to have kind of a behind-the-scenes question that's separate from the main interview, and this is what it is. So, Lee, I know in the main interview you talked about starting writing at 19. Of course, you started when you were much younger, but the idea for your book came at 19, and now you're 43. So that's a big gap, and you've learned a lot as you've been writing throughout the years. So my question for you is, what tips do you have for writers? Maybe encouragement, maybe some special resources, because resources have changed a lot in the past 20 years. So yeah, go for it. We'd love to hear about it.
All right. So that's a long answer. That's okay. I think it's going to sound initially counterintuitive, but I'll try to explain it right. So my best advice to young writers, I guess, especially any young writer, but especially, I mean, we're talking about Christian families on this Facebook group, right? So this would apply to Christians on just a whole other level that I'll discuss. But my best advice is watch the advice. Because what you're going to find is as you go on YouTube or something, right? You're going to find writers who say, hey, I wrote a bestseller. Here's how I did it. Here's my secret. And you'll go, they have a secret. And you go in and you basically stop becoming yourself because you're trying to emulate what success is for someone else, right? And so you got to be very, very discerning with the advice that you take. So I never try to give advice. Well, what I try to say is, here's how I did it, because that makes the difference between, here's what I did and you should do it too. Or like, look, this worked for me. This is how I did it. Take as much from it, as you will to solve your own, or chart your own path rather. And so, it's good to have writer friends. And it's good to have people that you can ask for advice and say, hey, what should I do here? But at the end of the day, understand that you are you. And so on a faith level, God made you who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were not made to be like other people. You were fearfully and wonderfully made, right? And so you just have to understand that God has made you for a purpose. And he's made you for a specific writing purpose. If you're supposed to be a writer, right? Don't go looking at other people's more successful seeming purposes, because success is defined very differently. And if you look at success as book sales and money, I'll talk to you as a believer. That's not the way to do it. There's only one metric of success for us in the end. That is hearing, well done, my good and faithful servant. That's it. That is the message. And so that's what you want. That's what you're aspiring to have, to hear when you stand before God. And so, you know what? There's nothing wrong with going on YouTube or going to see what other authors did, because you may learn about some algorithm thing, or you may learn about some tip and you're like, oh, okay, that's good. Don't go into it thinking, I got to be this person. I have to stifle the natural inspiration that God has given me in order to succeed in the market as this author says you must do to succeed. And so that's really it. Watch the advice. Be keen to hear it, but discern it and understand. Make the goal of advice to pull out nuggets. Let me find some nuggets of wisdom in this. Wisdom is better than advice. Find nuggets of wisdom, and maybe the Lord will lead you to use those nuggets. But by and large, be you, be who God made you to be. Write well. I guess I get it. Write well, like grammatically, get your grammar good, get your spelling good. These are not like advice. This is like baseline where you should be. That's a long kind of convoluted answer. It goes all over the place. But
I think it's great.
Man, and then I'll say this. This is lanyap. Lanyap is a Cajun word for a little bit extra. So, be nice. Be nice. Be nice. I'm telling you, like, there are jerks in every industry, and you don't want to work with. And if you're a jerk, people won't want to work with you. They won't want to deal with you. They won't want to. They won't want to have anything to do with you. And so I have had more opportunities open, just trying to be nice with the people, be respectful, with people, that I deal with. You know, I think of, some of the best advice. I'll talk about advice. But I don't know, how many remember, this was many, many years ago. They had kind of this late night war with Conan O'Brien and Jay Leno and all these different hosts. And for a little while, Conan O'Brien hosted the Tonight Show, and then Jay Leno came back in and replaced him. But in his last little episode, I was a fan of Conan. He gave some of the best advice that I've never forgotten. I would say wisdom. He said, work hard and be kind, and amazing things will happen. And I've never forgotten that. That's not a secret to success. That's not a so many step program. Work hard. Gotta work hard. Be kind. Those two things alone are some of the best things that you can do to set yourself up for success and for good relationships in the industry.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Lee.
My pleasure.
We're doing this little extra
No problem. I enjoy
question and answer session. So everybody make sure that you did tune in and watch or listen to the interview that we had about his book, Dawn of Destiny, Destiny's Edge, and all the other great things that are coming out this next year.
And it's on Facebook. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of the things. So come and find me.
We'll put a link. Yeah, we'll put a link in the description so you guys can get that for sure.
And don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions. Authors we respond. So
nice. Well, again, this is Angela with Book Reviews for Christian Families, and you guys take care. Have a good night. I have a question for you.
Okay.
You've got your epic Dawn of Destiny poster, movie poster on one side of you in the back, and I've been staring at that other picture and been wondering, are those bees?
This picture, yes.
And yes, on leaves, on teardrops. I don't know what that is. So
Okay.
can you
Oh
explain
man,
what's behind you on there?
I would genuinely love to. All right. Okay. So I talked about in our interview that we have we struggle with things as Christians, we struggle with things as believers, and we have a lot of doubts or we struggle with doubts on occasion. We have seasons of really feeling like I'm doing well, and then seasons where it's like, oh, I was in a bad season. And so I was driving home from work from my other job, where I worked a night shift, and I was on my way home, and I was really in a season of frustration. And it was you ever feel like people say, like, I asked God and he answered me, and sometimes you're like, what is, how? Like I'm asking God, and I don't even know I'm not getting anything. And so I was in this season where I felt like everyone is getting, all of my friends of Christian faith are getting answers to their questions. And, you know, God really spoke to me with this, and God really, and like, nothing, I'm not feeling it, you know, Lord. So I was driving home, and I was ranting to God. I just really was like, we're having a shouting match. An intense moment of fellowship is the phrase that I like to use.
Okay.
So me and God were having an intense moment of fellowship. And I basically said, like, why don't you give me clear-cut answers? Why don't you just, you know, the Gideon gets clear-cut answers in the old, give me something where it's like, all right, this is you. You know, I said, I don't want to have to figure out, did my creative brain think of this, or are you trying to tell me something? And so that was a shouting match that lasted the entire drive home. This was many years ago, probably 7 or 8 or even 10 years ago or something. And so I go home, and I'm getting in from work, so I'm taking a shower. I'm still yelling at God in the shower, right? And so, but I've shifted gears, and I said, like, I recognize that I'm not reading my Bible like I should, and that's probably a cause. But I was like, God, what if I just don't want to read it right now? What if I'm just, and you gotta understand, I was in a pessimistic place, right? Mm-hmm. But like, what if I am just not in the mood to read about Middle Eastern history, framework of the Bible or not? Like, I just don't want to. And I'm a random person, Angela. So I said, like, God, what if I just want to read about ants? What if I just want to read about ants one day? Can I just read about ants? Am I going to get my ant fix from the Bible? No. So what if I just want to read about other things? And I just, you know, and so this was a long, drawn out shouting match that lasted the drive home and the shower and everything. And I get out, and I'm about to go to bed. But I decide I'm going to do something about it. And I get online, and I sit in front of my computer. And I Googled Christian apathy. And so, click on the first thing that pops up, because I'm thinking I'll find something to get me through this. So I recognize sometimes you're at a place where you need to take some sort of action, corrective action, spiritually speaking. And so, I got on the computer, and I clicked on the first website, and it was verses about Christian apathy. And it was probably the worst layout of a website that I have ever seen in my life. It was like, imagine if you typed a novella, like a 20,000, 30,000 word thing, and put no indentions and no spaces, except they were all verses, not the written verses. They were all like Genesis, whatever, Jeremiah, whatever. And it was just, there was no spacing between them. I was like, I can't even like tell which verse I'm supposed to look at. So I just scroll, click. You know, I clicked on Proverbs 6:6. You have a Bible by? You have a Bible by your desk?
Hold on. Okay.
All right. Read Proverbs 6:6.
Oh, no, this is really small writing.
Read out loud.
Okay. See, small writing. So I don't
Okay.
have my glasses. Let's see. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Proverbs 6:6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard.
Go to the ant. I had just, that's the only part that mattered to me.
Consider her ways and be wise.
Yeah. I had just shouted. I spent a good 30, 40 minutes shouting, like, God, why don't you just speak to me plainly and clearly where I know it's you? What if am I getting my ant fixed from the Bible? No. Random list. Picked Proverbs 6. I don't know what this is. Okay, whatever. Guess I'll learn a new verse. Go to the ant. Go to the ant. I didn't know there was a verse about ants in the Bible. And that was one of the greatest wow God moments of my life. And it was one of those where I was like, okay, I'm wrong. And I knew that before, but now you've really shown me that, like, you are there and you're listening and you care. And I think we got to be honest with God. We got to be honest when we're frustrated or mad at God. You know, you get angry at parents as if you're younger sometimes, and that doesn't mean you hate them. You get angry at your relatives or coworkers or friends or whatever. God is he's a little bit higher on the pedestal than that, but my goodness, be honest with him. And I was honest in my frustration, and I will never forget that the day I asked God, like, am I going to get ants in the Bible from you? And random verse. And I got ants. I don't know if there's any other verse about ants in the Bible, but I'll never forget Proverbs 6:6. And my uncle does wood relief artwork. And so, you can see here, it says, go to the ant, Proverbs 6:6, and that little thing. You can't read it from there, but then he did this little, I asked him to. So these are actual leaves and wood relief ants. And I said, can you make me something? Because I don't ever want to forget that this happened. And if you're a Christian, this doesn't surprise you, because you've had moments where it's like, okay, you're there, God, and you're listening. It was just an incredibly powerful moment. So that's what that is. So I got movie poster and ants, right?
Nice.
But it's a part of my testimony. And as believers, we all have things like that have happened where you just know, all right, this is beyond my comprehension, and you are out there is what I know, and you are listening. And if you haven't had that, just wait. It'll come at some point. But yeah, that's what the answer.
Well,
I'm glad you asked me about the ants.
That. Yes, so now people don't have to wonder what that is.
Why are there ants on your wall? Right.
Yes. Nice.
Yep, that's it. That's the answer.
Thanks so much, Lee.
Sure.
This is Angela Newsom with RightLIGHT Reviews. So glad you took the time to listen. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Look forward to seeing you again.